Hello, everyone, and welcome to this stakeholder overview webinar on New York 6 gigawatt storage roadmap, which was filed in December 2022 jointly by NYSERDA and the New York Department of Public Service, or DPS. This is Shyam Mehta, an assistant director at NYSERDA, and I'm joined today by members of NYSERDA's as well as DPS's energy storage teams for this webinar, including Marco Padula, the Director of Markets and Innovation at DPS. Just a few housekeeping notes before we get underway here. So, and if you could just move to the next slide, please. Thank you. So today's webinar, just for clarification, there are two webinars on the storage roadmap scheduled for this week. This is the first of them, and this webinar will be focused on the bulk or large scale storage sector. And tomorrow's will be focused on the residential and retail storage sector. So just something to keep note of. They are not the same. They will not be covering the same exact ground. And today's focus will be on the bulk sector. Secondly, the webinar, as is typically the case, is being recorded. The recording will be posted within 72 hours of this webinar, and you'll be able to find a copy of the recording as well as the slide deck that we'll be using for the webinar on NYSERDA's bulk storage incentives page in the webinar presentation section. Next, all attendees will be muted on entry and throughout the course of this webinar. You can submit questions and comments in writing through the Q&A feature on WebEx at any time during the webinar, and we will be answering questions at the end of the presentation. Just a suggestion or a recommendation, please try to make sure you use the Q&A box, not the chat box for questions, although if you do, we'll try to pick them up in the chat box as well. And finally, we just in terms of the format or running order for today, so we have an hour and a half to get through both the content of the presentation as well as Q&A. We are hoping to reserve at least 20 minutes, if not more, for questions at the end. Now, we have gotten a lot of questions already through NYSERDA's energy storage email inbox, as well as via New York BEST, New York's Battery Storage Trade Association, and we'll probably be getting several more in the Q&A box over the course of this event. So it's likely we will not be able to answer every question at this webinar, but we will endeavor to get back to individual questions directly to the questioner over the course of this next week, and we may also publish an FAQ document for the more commonly asked questions that we could not get to today. So with those items out of the way, let's move to the next slide to just quickly go over the agenda for today. So we're going to start by talking about just some background and context for the need or motivation for this expanded storage deployment target of 6 gigawatts by 2030 that was adopted administratively last year, and that led to the development of this roadmap. Then we'll spend a little bit of time talking about the current progress that New York has made towards the previously adopted storage goals in terms of awarded and contracted volumes. Then we will then turn to talking about the results of modeling exercises that were conducted for this roadmap that highlight the locational and durational profile of the 6 gigawatt build out on a least cost, highest value basis. And then that will then flow into talking about our proposed allocation of the 6 gigawatt target, or at least the additionally needed procurement target by the three key sectors that are active in the market today that we're proposing to support through this roadmap via additional funding. And then that will take us into a deep dive section that's focused entirely on the bulk storage sector. We'll start out by talking about some considerations relating to procurement strategies, as well as market support mechanisms. That will then flow into going to depth about one particular market support mechanism that the roadmap proposed to underpin the bulk sector procurements, which is what we refer to as the index storage credit. So we'll be talking about design considerations there, as well as additional more general program design considerations and proposals that were advanced in the roadmap. We spent a little bit of time talking about a complementary pathway for procurement of storage, which is utility ownership of storage for specific transmission and distribution services. Um, and then we will go over some analysis relating to procurement costs as well as bill impacts stemming from the procurements that are proposed under this roadmap, with this with a particular eye on the bulk sector. That will then flow into a discussion of the proposed funding mechanism that would support the bulk program. And then finally, we'll talk about some considerations and recommendations related to long duration storage, which is not a focus of this roadmap, but still something that the DPS and I sort of felt necessary to include in the roadmap, given its likely importance over the next decade and a half as we attempt to deeply decarbonize New York's electric sector. And then finally, we will highlight several questions that were raised through over the course of the roadmap explicitly for stakeholder comment, go over the next steps in the process for the roadmap itself, and then move on to Q&A. So if you can move to the next slide, start by talking about the motivation or need for this expanded target of 6 gigawatts, given our existing target. So at this point, most stakeholders, I believe, would be familiar with the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, which was passed in New York in 2019, and that legislatively codified several decarbonization goals relating to both the electric sector as well as the overall economy. So given those goals, and the most salient of those would be 100% electric sector decarbonization by 2040. And then in addition, so considering that, as well as the need for electrifying both transport and buildings towards mostly economy-wide decarbonization by 2050, both of those drivers necessitate significant and rapid growth in renewable energy over the next decade. And when we say renewable energy, that in the context of New York, that functionally means a combination of land-based wind, offshore wind, and solar, both large-scale and distributed. So to enable and support the build out of renewable energy and its integration into the electric grid, the Climate Action Council scoping plan that some of you may have come across, the integration analysis included in that scoping plan indicates that a high volume of storage deployments will be needed to support those renewable energy growth needs. Specifically, approximately 12 gigawatts of energy storage needed by 2040. And then by 2050, that figure grows to in excess of 17 gigawatts as being necessary in a least cost decarbonized grid. And that really is the key driver for the expanded target of 6 gigawatts. Because we currently have an interim goal of 1.5 gigawatts for 2025 that was established through the first 2018 storage roadmap. We also have a CLCPA-based goal of 3 gigawatts for 2030, which was formerly an administrative goal, again, advanced to the first roadmap. Those are recognized by Governor Hochul last year as needing to be updated, given the significant additional build-out of storage needed in later decades. So an expanded target of 6 gigawatts would play a crucial role in creating a glide path to that 12 gigawatt figure by the end of 2040, as well as 17 plus gigawatts by 2050, to allow to make for a less challenging lift in the later parts of the decades, and also create momentum and market learnings early on over the course of this decade to make more feasible and achievable the goals of the CLCPA, as well as these longer term storage needs. So that's really the context behind this 6 gigawatt goal, as well as which then led to the development of the roadmap to chart a pathway from a policy perspective to achieving that goal. If you can move to the next slide then. So with that in mind, let's just quickly talk about where we currently are with regard to our storage goals in New York, at least from a procurement perspective. We currently, in terms of deployment, we have a little under 300 megawatts currently deployed, relatively early days, but far in excess of that has been procured. And again, that is a big part of the current procurement volume is driven by the programs that were initiated or implemented as part of that 2018 storage roadmap and approving order by the Public Service Commission. So that roadmap led to the codification of that 1.5 gigawatts by 2025 target, as well as the 3 gigawatt by 2030 target, which was an administrative goal prior to being a CLCPA target, being enshrined in the CLCPA. And those goals were supported by upfront standard offer incentive programs that were administered by NYSERDA. So that suite of programs was referred to as the Market Acceleration Bridge Incentive Programs, and that program offered incentives to install energy storage systems for three market segments: bulk projects that are typically larger than 5 megawatt that are interconnected to the transmission system and provide wholesale services, which is the focus of today's webinar. Commercial retail energy storage systems that primarily get compensated under the VEDA tariff and are up to 5 megawatt in size. And then also a residential storage incentive program was implemented for single family residential storage systems that are paired with residential PV on Long Island specifically. So to date, New York has procured just around 1.3 gigawatts of energy storage projects across these three segments, and which represents almost 90% of that 2025 interim target of 1,500 megawatts. And of that 1.3 gigawatts, a little over 800 megawatts was procured through the roadmap 2018 roadmap programs. If you move to the next slide, you get a slightly more granular breakdown of those procurements. Once again, you can see a total of 1.3 gigawatts procured, of which 811 megawatts was procured through the roadmap 1.0 or 2018 roadmap programs. And that 811 breaks down into about 480 megawatts of bulk procurements, 320 of commercial retail, which is relatively evenly split between upstate and downstate regions, and then 11 megawatts of residential systems through the Long Island program I mentioned. The remainder of the roughly 500 megawatts that is procured outside of the roadmap 2018 roadmap programs is a combination of projects procured by utilities through their dispatch right RFPs, as well as projects that were procured that are paired or co-located with solar or wind projects that were procured as part of the projects procured by NYSERDA through the Renewable Energy Standard, the Tier 1 large-scale renewables, as well as the offshore wind procurement program. And then the remainder of that volume is a combination of legacy projects as well as utility demonstration projects, including non-wires alternative projects that were installed quite a while back. So that gets us again to around 90% of that 1.5 gigawatt goal. And then in terms of 6 gigawatts, just to set up the discussion that follows, that means that the state needs to procure an additional 4.7 gigawatts through the roadmap, the 2022 roadmap programs proposed to attain that 6 gigawatt target by 2030. And to take you through the next several sections now, I will turn things over to my colleague, Skylar Matson at NYSERDA, who's a senior advisor and one of the architects from NYSERDA's side of this 6 gigawatt roadmap. So Skylar, please take it away from here.
Thank you, Shyam. Very, very cool to see this overview, see how far we've come since 2016. Also very exciting to see over 400 people on this webinar. That's amazing. Could we go to the next slide and we'll jump right into some of the modeling results from the roadmap analysis. So we commissioned E3, Energy and Environmental Economics, to do some statewide capacity expansion modeling, as well as some more detailed granular modeling related to locations, durations, and services that storage should be providing in a least cost decarbonized system out to 2050 in New York State. You can see the results on the right showing the chart of the build out, as well as the zonal summary of these tables. And I know it's kind of an eye chart right now, but you'll see these posted to our website soon to take a more detailed look. But as you can see, the primary drivers right here, you see a lot of downstate New York deployments, zones J and K, which is New York City and Long Island. The model is pushing a lot of the deployments down there, approximately 2/3 of all deployments in downstate New York by 2030, to really help drive decarbonization and integrate offshore wind, as well as assisting with transmission constraints. By 2050, a lot of the deployments shift back to upstate New York to help with the integration of the tremendous amounts of internal statewide large-scale renewables to cost-effectively meet reliability needs. If we go to the next slide, we can kind of see this breakdown a separate way by duration. This is broken down by 4 or 8 hour duration, although the model was constrained to only choose between those types of durations. This basically represents averages of 4 hour duration or averages of 8 hour durations. They could wiggle around in the model between those ranges as well, but we've broken it down here by averages. Most of the modeled storage deployments that we see in the model by 2030 are 4 hour duration, primarily driven by near-term cost. But as you move forward in time, the model shifts to deploying a considerable amount of 8+ hour duration storage. And a lot of that storage is focused on downstate New York, zones J and zone K, for reliability purposes as peaking plants start retiring, and we need to replace that slightly longer duration need within load pockets and for the local capacity requirements downstate. You'll see in both of these charts on the right, on the past 2 slides, you see kind of a bump from 2030 to 2035, where the deployment in 2035 is almost the same as 2040. That is a direct result of the investment tax credit. When the storage model was initially built out in early summer of last year, the IRA had not passed. There was no storage ITC. And the deployment of storage was much more of an exponential curve out to 2050. But what we saw happen once the investment tax credit was taken into account in the model was the model would pull a lot of that deployment by 2040 up into the earlier years to take advantage of that 30% tax credit, because it was cheaper to get that tax credit 5 to 8 years early than wait for those 5 to 8 years of cost decline. So that was a really interesting takeaway in the model that showed, a significant build out of long duration storage by 2035, as well as, a significant build out in general in the earlier years to take advantage of that tax credit. Next slide, please. So as Shyam had mentioned, right now we're at 1,300 megawatts of storage, meaning 4,700 megawatts of new projects will need to be awarded. We've just saw the modeling results, and that's kind of an idealized system where it's mostly a zonal model, pipe and bubble, showing general transmission constraints, renewable build out by zone, and trying to build the least cost system with all types of storage. When it comes to us, after that result, we have to translate that into actual policies and programs in the real world to figure out how to actually make that happen. I'll tell you, one of the main questions we get so far, and we'll probably get to this later, is are you just going to take those results and buy that storage where it is? The answer is no. We're not just going to take the results from the model and try to do exactly that and make that world exactly happen, because there's a lot of things the models can't tell us, like on the ground details about permitting timing and ISO class years and interconnection costs, those types of things that can be very specific and granular to individual projects. It also doesn't necessarily have the granularity to assess the differences between, say, a behind the meter residential versus a front of the meter retail versus a bulk project operating in a different zone. And so it's kind of up to us as the program administrator to work with you all as stakeholders and figure out the best way to develop programs that can make those 4,700 megawatts be installed and commissioned by the end of 2030. So with all those constraints, we kind of looked at the different sectors that we have operational in New York State, which are the bulk sector, over 5 megawatts, retail, which we're talking about, anything within the standard interconnection, under 5 megawatts, and then behind the meter residential. Those are the 3 primary sectors in New York State, and we need to find a way to get 4,700 megawatts of new projects out of those. If we start with bulk, we feel really confident that we have a huge pipeline of bulk. There's over 20,000 megawatts of bulk projects in the NISO interconnection queues. But when we look at the deployment timeframe for those projects, they're often 5+ years. And so we don't have a lot of time to deploy those projects, and we don't really have a lot of confidence in our ability to be procuring those in the late 2020s and still have them constructed by 2030, by our deadline. So we didn't necessarily feel comfortable going beyond, say, 3,000 megawatts of bulk storage just because of those timing concerns. We didn't want to have all of our eggs in one basket, because the attrition risk or the development risk of those projects, losing 1 or 2 of those projects post 2030 could be a big loss. So we felt comfortable limiting that to 3,000 megawatts. On the retail side, We also want to go big here because these projects are still significant in size, 2 to 5 megawatts often, but they take significantly less time to be deployed. They can go through the standard interconnection process and often get deployed within 2 to 3 or 3.5 years. So we have a longer time frame with which to develop these projects, and we feel comfortable being able to rely on at least 1,500 megawatts of these projects. We already have over 1,000 megawatts of these projects in the pipeline. We've awarded 300 in the past. We feel really confident in those projects' ability to be deployed. And then residential, we have limited experience with this, I would say. We have had a program that was relatively successful on Long Island over the past few years, but we know there's a huge demand for residential storage, either standalone or paired with PV, as well as to operate as aggregations through virtual power plants all across the state. And so I'm really looking forward to being able to hopefully roll that type of program out over the rest of the state. Each of these different types of projects have a different type of mechanism that we would use to support these. They have very different markets, very different development timeframes and styles. And so we want to go through in the next few slides how we plan on procuring these types of projects, starting, I think, with the bulk project. If we could go to the next slide, please. So with bulk storage, we began in the initial roadmap with a standard offer program, which is what we called our first market acceleration bridge incentive program that launched in 2019. We knew they took a long time to develop, and we knew they required some financial assistance. So we worked with developers and internal stakeholders to develop a program that was relatively successful initially in 2019 to procure contracts for bulk storage projects through an upfront incentive mechanism. That mechanism was able to give a fixed dollar amount to projects to develop and construct, and that payment would be made at commissioning, and then the project was on its own to participate in the marketplace for the rest of its project life. The difficulty with that is when you run into things like a COVID pandemic or highly volatile wholesale market prices. And then you need a slightly different type of mechanism. So we went into this roadmap knowing on the long term, we probably couldn't rely on this upfront standard offer mechanism for bulk, wholesale market projects anymore. And so we really wanted to focus on developing a different type of concept. We knew that these projects take a long time to develop. They're all going to be going through the NYISO interconnection queue. And we also know, based on our practical considerations, we wanted to be able to do at least 3,000 megawatts. But if you do 3,000 megawatts and you only have 3 years to procure them, you need to be doing about 3 annual procurements of about 1,000 megawatts apiece. So we're trying to kind of strike that balance of being able to go big on bulk, 1,000 megawatts a year, but not going too big or too big too early and procuring the higher cost projects now versus waiting a few years. So we felt a flat 1,000 megawatts a year for 3 years kind of struck that balance really well. Next slide, please. When we look at the market support mechanisms, like I said, we wanted to move beyond our previous method of just a standard offer upfront incentive, but there's an infinite possibility of different ways to support bulk storage. We did a review of models that have worked in other territories, other proposals from stakeholders, and really put them through, a test of 4 primary criteria that have been used in the past to evaluate the feasibility of programs in the state. And what we really wanted to do was look at how would these stand up? What's the cost to ratepayers? How feasible is it that we could use this mechanism to get these 3,000 megawatts and have them be installed by 2030? What's the cost? How efficient is it? Is it really leaving those market signals intact? All these considerations we had to think about when designing these programs. Next slide, please. So when we evaluated all these programs, there was basically 6 that were the primary mechanisms that we thought we could potentially pull off. And once we put them through the assessment of these 4 key characteristics, we really found that some of them just were not going to be able to cut it. They were not going to be able to get us enough megawatts of bulk projects in enough time while maintaining good market signals that allow the NYISO to use these things as best as they can for maximum ratepayer benefit. So when we start with number 1 here, which is the upfront incentive that we used to do, it was very easy to implement and retained all the market signals. But when it came right down to it, the effectiveness for developers when they got that contract to maintain their certainty and continue development, it made sense upfront, but then it provided no hedging and no certainty long term if prices went up or COVID hit or delays happen. So we really were looking for other things. That really pointed us to developing more of a long-term contracting mechanism, maybe something that could mirror the index rec, that could provide a long-term hedge and provide long-term certainty for projects to develop, while also maintaining ratepayer, the ability for ratepayers to grab long-term value without necessarily overpaying. There's a handful of other options here that we went through in the roadmap. I'd encourage you to look through those if you're curious about what may or may not work in your states, or what may or may not work in New York. We laid these out in pretty good detail there, but we'll talk through a couple of these in more detail in the coming slides. Next slide, please. So based on the assessment, we really came down to having one main option that met all of our criteria and we felt very comfortable with. And after talking with stakeholders, it seemed like the best option to move forward in terms of providing the certainty we needed in the market while maintaining market signals and reducing the uncertainty to ratepayers and lowering attrition. So what we're calling this mechanism is the index storage credit mechanism, which is trying to mirror the index rec approach that the Public Service Commission has approved for NYSERDA to do with offshore wind projects, onshore large-scale renewables, as well as the Tier 4 program, where a project bids in a strike price, which essentially represents their revenue needs for the project. And then that strike price is compared to some reference prices, which are roughly equivalent to the amount of revenue that a project could potentially make in one or multiple markets that are available to them. And the delta between their strike price and those reference prices represent what, say, NYSERDA or some other entity would pay them to support the project as a type of incentive process over time. Next slide, please. To go into a little bit more detail, just the way the money would flow and the information would flow for a bulk storage project operating in the NYSO, but being contracted with NYSERDA to create index storage credits and be supported through that indexing mechanism. NYSERDA would have a contract with the selected storage project. They would have a strike price they would bid to us, and we would be paying them the strike price minus the reference price, while the developer and the project itself would actually be providing energy, capacity, ancillary services, whatever markets they participate in, to the NYSO, and receiving revenue from the NYSO. At the same time, NYSERDA would be working with the NYSO to capture the data that we need to calculate those reference prices in terms of energy and capacity prices to determine the value of the index storage credits on a month-to-month basis. Next slide, please. When we're looking at designing this type of index storage credit design, what we really need to think about is, how do you generate these credits? Is it going to be like an index rec mechanism where each megawatt injected generates a credit? When we thought about it for storage, that's really not the purpose of storage. We're not just trying to maximize throughput throughout, say, a battery or something throughout the course of the day. What we really want is storage to be used in the markets for the best possible purpose at any given time. It's incredibly flexible and it only does what you tell it. So what we really want to do is stay out of the way of the markets and make sure that we're having operational storage projects do what is best for them and what is best for the market. And so we did not want to make the definition of a storage credit be something that is injected over the course of the day. So what we're focusing more on is operational storage capacity in the market. That means a project that is bidding into markets, that is not on an outage, that is available to be used for the best possible purpose over the course of the day. With that being the case, if that project is operational, they will generate one credit for each megawatt hour of installed capacity of the storage that is available that day. So if you're a 100 megawatt asset, 4 hours of duration, you have 400 megawatt hours. If you're operational over the course of an entire day, you're generating 400 index storage credits. Importantly, there's no performance requirements. We're not trying to maximize throughput. We're not trying to give you a certain type of discharge. We really want you to stay operational and follow the NYSO market rules throughout the course of the index storage credit contract. If you're not operational, you're not generating index storage credits. And so that's what we're really focusing on here. Previous programs were designed to do somewhere around 15 to 20 years, but the 20 years might force some of the projects to be beyond their optimal design. So we're really focusing more on a 15-year contract term as the recommendation through this process so far. Next slide, please. Okay, this is something that I know folks will probably have questions on, and we saved it till kind of the end, but it'll probably make more sense now that we've already gone through the high level concept of what an index storage credit is and what the strike price versus reference price calculation looks like. When we look at what the reference prices for storage actually are, we can't just necessarily take exactly what we learned from the index rec process and apply it to storage, because in the index rec process, the reference prices are just the average energy price over the course of the day, because all that matters for solar and wind is you generate power and you get paid for the energy. In storage, it's the arbitrage value that matters. And so we had to switch the reference energy pricing to a reference energy arbitrage price, because that's what represents the actual energy value for storage in the market. And so when we're calculating a reference price for storage, we're looking at the arbitrage within a day. And so we've taken the concept from places like Texas and others who use a top 4 bottom 4 or TB4 concept, where you take the top 4 highest price hours of the day ahead energy market and subtract out the bottom 4 hours of that day ahead energy market to kind of find that 4-hour arbitrage value. And we're going to use that as the reference energy arbitrage value for that day. We have considered also putting a round trip efficiency component in there to better reflect the actual operation of a storage asset, but we're not sure that's actually essential in any way and might just kind of clog the wheels here. So we're still considering that. For the reference capacity price, there's been a lot of change happening in the NYISO capacity market, and we're going to have to represent that because it does have a significant impact on the way energy storage is compensated in the capacity market. So for the reference capacity price, we'll be basing that on the NYISO installed capacity spot auctions for the month on a location-specific basis. And in the NYISO zone, there's 4 capacity areas. We're going to be taking those locality-specific capacity prices and then adjusting them according to the prevailing capacity accreditation factor for each duration type. As it stands today, a 4-hour duration asset is getting 90% of a capacity credit across the state, but there's going to be new capacity accreditation factors that will be calculated by May of every year, and we'll be able to take those into the reference capacity price. So when it all comes down to it, the index storage credit value, the value of each credit generated for the month, will be calculated by taking the strike price that is bid in by the developer and then subtracting the average reference energy arbitrage price over the course of the month, and then also subtracting out the reference capacity price over the course of the month. And so when you take those two reference prices out of the strike price, whatever's left is what the value of the index storage credit is. You multiply it by the number of credits generated that month, and that's the payment made from NYSERDA to the developer. Next slide, please. A couple more considerations when we're trying to design a program like this. Often with these large-scale projects, there's a long time between signing a contract and actual deployment, and a lot of things can happen in between that time. One of those things that can happen is inflation over that time, and so we're going to provide an optional provision that allows the strike price of projects to undergo a one-time adjustment at the end of the cycle of the contract life before commissioning, that allows the changes in the cost indices to be reflected in the bid price, in the strike price. We still have to kind of iron out the specific details about when and how that would happen, but we're likely to follow some of the precedents that we've seen in the Tier 1 process. The settlement period, like I said, the reference prices we're going to calculate daily because it's the daily energy arbitrage value that is the energy revenue opportunity for storage, not necessarily the monthly. Just average energy price. And so we have to take those daily energy arbitrage values, capture them every day over the course of the month, and then calculate the average. We will then do monthly settlements as opposed to daily, because daily settlements would just be completely infeasible administratively, and we already have a monthly settlement process set up through our other large-scale programs. In terms of a payment floor, there's actually a chance that we have here to make the contracts symmetrical, so that if the strike price, which in the near term is likely to be higher than the reference prices, we're going to be paying the projects. But if the difference, if the reference prices in the future increase beyond the strike price, the contract is symmetrical, and it will actually pay NYSERDA back over the course of the month. In terms of future wholesale market rule changes, I'm going to spend a little bit of time here on this because this is another concept we've gotten a lot of questions about so far. as is the case with a lot of other programs, we recommend that amendments can be made that resemble change in law provisions, but represent change in market conditions that might make the existing contract or the existing strike price or reference prices obsolete. We want to make sure something like that is in the contracts, just so ratepayers are not exposed to significant downside in the event of massive market rule changes that might not be represented in the contract. We don't plan on this being a regular thing. We don't plan on this being something that, if prices go up for a few days, we have to, trigger a change in rule provision. This is mainly designed, and we still have to iron out the details of what this specifically is going to be, but this is primarily in here to make sure that, for example, if storage ends up not going into the capacity market at all, or having brand new ancillary services that are designed for storage, and storage ends up primarily operating in completely different markets, and the reference prices are completely stale or obsolete, or showing that the energy or capacity prices go to zero, and they need a full strike price payment, but they're getting full compensation in other markets. We want to avoid those really distant outliers that are very unlikely but could provide some significant downside to ratepayers, and so we're just trying to prevent those types of things from happening. Next slide, please. In terms of bid evaluation criteria, there's a lot of requirements on the storage projects in terms of where we might want them located, their durations, but there's also a lot of requirements on NYSERDA and DPS about where we're going to locate these projects and what we want to do with them. And so we're going to have to incorporate price and non-price factors to make sure that we can meet the needs of ratepayers and meet the goals of our programs. We're likely to follow a process very similar to the tier 1 and offshore wind projects, where there's something like a 70-20-10 breakdown between price, project viability, and economic benefits. But there may need to be additional components in there, in which we will outline in our implementation plan, to correct for or include the ability to offset fossil fuel peaker plants, which is explicitly called out in the CLCPA as a primary focus for energy storage programs. So that's kind of unique to us, so we're going to have to consider ways to implement that as we go forward. But bid evaluation criteria, A, will likely include non-price factors, and B, will likely mirror what's been done in the past, except for the unique energy storage components. In terms of maximum bid prices, I know there's been a lot of discussion, a lot of questions about, is there going to be a bid ceiling like there was in the utility RFPs, and can you make it public? We are likely to have, at least internally here, a maximum bid price where it's just not economical at that time to procure storage beyond a certain level. It's up in the air whether that's going to be fixed or more of a soft evaluation metric. But either way, it is unlikely that if we do have something like that, we would make it available to the public to see, because we would not want to kind of influence decision-making or influence bid pricing, or giving people a price to shoot for. We don't want to mess up the competitive dynamics by giving kind of a public notice of what an acceptable price is. So it's very likely we'll follow past precedent and maybe have that internally as an evaluation metric, but not necessarily as a public-facing feature. Next slide, please. So this is an example of the index storage credit. Once we've kind of taken those considerations into account, and looking at how this is actually going to happen on a daily basis. So I want to draw your attention first to the box on the left side, which goes from day 1 to 30. So this is a 30-day month, and then shows in the daily energy arbitrage index how we would be calculating the top 4 minus the bottom 4 energy price hours of the day, showing that, for example, on day 1, the top 4 hours added up minus the bottom 4 hours comes out to an energy arbitrage value of $70 per megawatt hour, and all the units on the slide are per megawatt hour. You do this calculation over the course of all 30 days, and then you take that average, and that's what becomes the second gray box, the gray box in the middle chart here, the monthly energy arbitrage reference price of $29. And as you can see in this middle section here, the strike price bid from the developer was $80. We just did this calculation to show that the monthly energy arbitrage reference price was $29. And from the capacity market spot auction pricing, we found that the capacity reference price is $20. And in future materials, you'll be able to see more of a breakdown of how that capacity reference price is converted from the market price in dollars per kW to this price, which is dollars per megawatt hour. It's really just a simple calculation going from dollars per kW to dollars per MW to dollars per megawatt hour using a 365 days at their duration, and trying to break it down to convenient units so we can compare everything here. So once you have a strike price of $80 and you subtract both the $29 monthly energy arbitrage price and the $20 capacity reference price, you're left with the monthly settlement price of $31 per index storage credit. And you can follow along here in this box on the right, kind of goes through this calculation example. So once you have that $31 per index storage credit, all you need to know now is how many storage credits did they generate that month. So assuming this 100 megawatt, 400 megawatt hour asset was available every day of the month, you're generating 400 storage credits per day. Times 30 days, that's 12,000 storage credits. Now you have 12,000 storage credits, they're $31 a piece, multiply those together for $372,000 is the payment from NYSERDA to the project that month. All of these numbers are completely made up, so it's not necessarily a representative for the month. It was just kind of a example to show how to walk through these calculations. Importantly, this strike price has a lot of considerations going into it. Like I said before, the strike price is basically trying to represent the revenue need that a project has going forward. But you'll notice here that ancillary services are not captured in these reference prices. Ancillary services are something that storage does pretty well and is additional revenue that storage could be providing and could be receiving through the markets. And that additional revenue could serve to buy down your strike price so that you're more competitive and should be representative in the total value of your contract. And that's something to consider as you're moving forward. And there'll be a lot more detail on that in future materials and the implementation plan. Next slide, please. This is just a slide briefly showing the symmetricality of the, if that's a word, of the bulk index storage credit, where if in the early years, in the first example on the left side, the reference prices are quite a bit below the strike price. So every month NYSERDA is paying the developer the difference. If in later times the reference energy and capacity price add up to more than the strike price, those months the developer would pay NYSERDA back. So that's just showing how symmetrical the contract is. Next slide, please. Some additional considerations just in general are considerations around geography. We know we have seen the modeling showing 2/3 of all the projects should be downstate in G through K. So how do we implement that? Should this be through soft scoring in project viability, or should this be kind of a carve out? We're a little concerned doing hard carve outs and forcing ourselves to shoot for a very specific number in certain zones, just because we don't necessarily want to overpay to hit a specific number if there might be valuable projects elsewhere for significantly cheaper. So we're thinking about maybe soft targets for different regions to try to implement geographical considerations for disadvantaged communities as well as peaker reduction, while not necessarily handcuffing ourselves to those things. The one caveat there is that the CLCPA guidance is requiring DPS and NYSERDA to, in any new bulk storage program, to identify a certain proportion of projects that will be used to benefit disadvantaged communities through the reduction of peaker plants. So up to a certain point, there will be some amount, maybe 35 or 40% of projects we will want to deploy in these zones, primarily zones J and K, to meet that requirement. But beyond that level, we're not certain we want to necessarily put another hard cap on, say, 66% of all projects being in those zones. But up to a certain point for our CLCPA requirements, we will need to do some form of hard cap to ensure we meet that requirement. In terms of duration, we're very flexible. We are technology agnostic, we're duration agnostic. We want the market to develop what is best suited for the market conditions and for ratepayers. So we're debating how to do those durational considerations. We could do explicit solicitations just for 4 hours and explicit solicitations for 8+ duration hour assets. But there's nothing to say that the typical, just traditional way of doing the index storage credit procurements, that could work for any duration competing against each other. Because all we would have to determine is the actual cost of the project to NYSERDA over the course of the time, and we can compare them on an apples-to-apples basis regardless of the duration of the assets, just given their strike prices and the potential value over time. So we're still considering how to do that, but once again, we're hesitant to do specific required carve-outs as opposed to doing maybe soft targets for certain durations over time and in different locations. For labor considerations, we are pushing ahead with a requirement that projects with a 1 megawatt and greater capacity participating in the program have to pay New York State prevailing wage as a contractual requirement. So this is a pretty strong push we're making here for the labor certifications, and we're going to require certifications of the projects during the construction period. Next slide, please. I already covered this a little bit for disadvantaged communities and environmental justice considerations. Bulk storage projects are kind of unique. They're very similar to large-scale renewable projects where, despite their location, they're often injecting directly into the interstate transmission grid. So there's very little locality-specific impacts that you can really point to. It's more of a wide-ranging benefit across the electric system. Certain areas you could kind of say the project is primarily helping that zone, but it's certainly, in almost every case, broader than any given zip code or any given county, say. And so when we're trying to develop projects and trying to develop programs that can really provide benefits to disadvantaged communities, the primary way that the CLCPA has kind of pushed for storage to do this is by requiring that we provide the benefits through the offsetting of peaker plants in disadvantaged communities. So that's what we're going to push for, is at least 35% of program funding to support projects in areas that can provide those benefits to disadvantaged communities. Importantly, we're not necessarily focusing on citing the specific projects that are doing this service within the disadvantaged communities. That's not necessarily a priority for them either. But we're trying to focus on program design that can provide those benefits in terms of air quality, reliability, and all those benefits to those disadvantaged communities through their siting. Next slide, please. So switching gears here a little bit, we've been talking about market-based storage, wholesale market storage that are participating in the NYISO wholesale markets. But importantly, there's a lot of services that storage can provide that are not captured in markets today and are very, very unlikely to be captured even in future markets. And these are primarily transmission and distribution services, whether it's congestion reduction, substation deferral, transmission security support, curtailment reductions, other transmission or distribution services, reactive power, et cetera, that really are not compensated through any primary market right now. The only way for these storage to provide those services would be through the utility, who currently operates their system to provide these services outside of the market. And so what we're trying to push for is the utilities to focus on doing studies that can utilize storage, showing the ways in which we can utilize storage to provide these services at the same or lower cost as other technologies, and see in certain cases there might be areas where storage can actually provide these services better or cheaper than alternatives. So that's what we're really focusing on, not just putting storage in places to do other things, but really trying to do studies to focus on where is storage actually better than the alternatives, and try to bring those projects forward as key support services that storage can provide to really make the grid a lot stronger and a lot better, while providing very essential services that we're going to be paying for anyway through other potential mechanisms. So this option is something we're already moving forward with. There's an advanced technology working group under the comprehensive grid planning process that has formed an energy storage task force that will be doing studies over the course of the next year or two to figure out what methods and what types of projects are most beneficial in terms of storage, and then what specific projects throughout the utility territories are needed, and where can storage actually provide the best value as opposed to poles, wires, and substations. Where can storage actually be better and faster and cheaper than those alternatives, and maybe letting the utilities bring those forward through individual rate cases or other transmission proceedings to really push forward storage in that mechanism. Next slide. So the cost impact of these programs, they are not free, but they do provide significant benefits. So when we calculate the bulk storage procurement cost, those costs are primarily payments to the developer over the course of the lifetime, as calculated through the long-term strike price minus reference price calculations over the course of the months for 3,000 megawatts of bulk storage over the 15-year life of those contracts. When we add that all up, it adds up to somewhere around 470 to $1.2 billion, 470 million to $1.2 billion in net present value to 2022 to fully support all 3,000 megawatts of bulk storage. There's that range because there's future uncertainty in those, and that's putting it lightly, future uncertainty in energy and capacity revenues, especially for storage with all the mechanisms and market models that are changing right now. The total cost for all three programs, so that's now including the 1,500 megawatts of retail and 200 megawatts of residential on top of the 3,000 megawatts of bulk. When you put it all together, the total cost is expected to be between $1 and $1.7 billion, including all of the administrative costs to run the programs. When we put that into customer bill impacts, we are pretty excited to see that over the long-term life of these programs, from now until 2045, which is the total duration of time we'll be making payments, the total estimated impact is between 0.3 and 0.5% increase in customer electric bills. So we're able to keep those impacts relatively light over the course of the program, which is very exciting for us. Next slide. The funding mechanism to actually collect this money, we're trying to stay within processes that we've used before. We have a lot of mechanisms that are very similar to the retail storage mechanism we're proposing here, as well as the bulk we're proposing here. We already use in our tier 1, 2, 3, 4 of the CES, our offshore wind standard, we already use a payment obligation on the load serving entities to collect a share based on load ratio share of the statewide load, paying into the cost of the programs based on that share to cover the cost of the program. We're likely to piggyback on those existing methods, inclusive of the areas that NYPA and LIPA, not as non-jurisdictional LSEs, control, and agreeing with them to accept the obligations in proportion of their share of statewide load. So we'll be putting these funding requests through the load serving entities, and they will collect the funds to fund the programs year to year. In the event, and this is another thing we got a lot of questions on, in the event that the state utilities, LIPA or NYPA, directly procure or develop their bulk storage projects outside of our program, those independent storage procurements would be accounted for in the assessment of the bulk storage need and the bulk storage collections we make through their territories through the solicitations. Next slide, please. As Shyam mentioned, long duration storage is not necessarily a huge consideration in the near term in New York State. We have a significant need for even shorter duration storage in the very near term as we decarbonize and close peaker plants and build large scale renewables and offshore wind projects. We really need significant near-term storage deployments, and many of the long duration storage projects and technologies are not necessarily commercial today. So most of the near-term deployments we're expecting to be 4 and 8 hour duration storage over the next 7 years. And that's primarily what the 6 gigawatts, the initial 6 gigawatts is going to be comprised of. Importantly, as Shyam mentioned at the beginning, the 6 gigawatts is not the end. You know, we're going to 6 gigawatts because we know we need to go beyond 6 gigawatts to 12 or even 15 to 17 gigawatts in the long term. And we need to set up a operational and operations in the state, as well as a developer pool and industry that is available to provide those additional megawatts over the long term. And as we switch to those longer term time periods, the durational requirements of storage are going to keep increasing. We see significant demand for 8+ hour duration resources as early as 2030 to 2035, and durations even longer than that as we get to 2040, and especially beyond 2040 when we're operating a net zero carbon grid. We expect that to need 5, 10 plus gigawatts beyond the 6 gigawatts by 2040, and a significant quantity of those could be long duration storage. I would point you to our appendix where we have a really interesting section on long duration storage modeling about the ability of long duration storage to offset zero carbon firm resources, which is kind of what we're calling this dispatchable zero carbon resource, whether it's hydrogen or something else, being able to provide those long-term reliability services in its fully decarbonized system. But importantly, there's actually the ability to have long duration storage fill in for a lot of those things. If the industry doesn't show up as much as we need to do, or if we end up needing to go beyond our initial plans, we've found that long duration storage can serve almost as a one-to-one replacement for a lot of that zero carbon firm capacity, up to 5+ gigawatts. So this is very exciting for us, and we wanted to make a recommendation in the roadmap that we, A, start testing these designs to make sure everybody involved, including the utilities and the NISO, is comfortable with how something that might be 20 or 30 or 50 hours of duration can actually operate in the grid, to figure out how we can pay for those things and how it actually works at scale. But also work with our R&D side at NYSERDA and through our innovation program to continue funding development of projects and of technologies that are likely to be commercial by the time we need them in 2035. So 12 years might seem like a long period of time, but to start fresh and develop brand new technologies and test them in manufacturing at scale, it's not that much time. So we wanted to make sure that we're prioritizing things that are going to be commercialized at the megawatt and gigawatt scale within the next 10 years. So that's a key recommendation for long duration storage out of this roadmap. Next slide, please. I think this is my last slide, and this was just some of the questions that we were posing to stakeholders within the document, in hopes that stakeholders could comment on these with their opinions through the comment period that's open now until March 20th. We've talked briefly earlier about the bulk dispatch rights contracts that have been run since 2019. Those were contracts that the joint utilities ran RFPs for, and they started at 7 and now are going to about 10 or maybe even 15 years of duration over those contracts, where the utility is procuring the dispatch rights to a project that a developer would construct, own, and operate, and give dispatch rights to the utilities over the years of the contract, and the utility is paying for the value that the project is providing. There's some interesting things, interesting dynamics that have come from those RFPs. We've learned a lot through running those. Importantly, many of the utilities, after running one and even in some cases 2 or 3 RFPs, many of the utilities have yet to meet their bulk storage dispatch rights requirements in terms of number of procurements and megawatts procured. And so we're looking for comments on what should we do for those remaining megawatts that have yet to be procured. Should they be absorbed into future NYSERDA programs? Should they be maintained as a requirement on the utilities? Just to try to figure out what's the best and most efficient way to move forward procuring bulk storage. The second one here is asking for input on the mechanism for procuring longer duration assets. As I mentioned before, there's nothing keeping us from necessarily using the existing index storage credit method proposal, just using a top 4, bottom 4 hour reference energy arbitrage price and letting all durations of storage compete. But we're trying to see if there's anything we're missing in terms of should we be seeking 8-hour specific assets utilizing a top 8, bottom 8 mechanism? Is there something specific that benefits them or hinders them when participating against 4-hour duration assets in the same RFP? We'd like to hear more from developers about what those slightly longer duration assets, what would they prefer? What would be better for them and for ratepayers in terms of making sure we can still procure some of those assets that might actually hold their value, especially in the capacity market, a little bit longer than, say, 4-hour or 2-hour duration assets in the near term. This third one is looking for bulk and other offsite retail projects. These are projects that are injecting directly into the interstate transmission grid and the high voltage distribution and transmission grid. How do we make sure that those programs provide those 35% of funding to benefit disadvantaged communities? We know we want to site these assets near these peaker plants and near areas that need to be decarbonized, near renewable energy sites, to make sure we can provide that emissions reductions, the health quality and air quality benefits. Is there a better way to draw those lines from benefits to disadvantaged communities? We want to hear as much feedback as we can on those fronts. The second to last one here is on just long duration storage. Is there a way, is there a preference for what type and size of long duration storage we need to be focusing on to maximize the value to the system and the learning we and the utilities can have over the next few years to make sure we know how this works, how to compensate it, how to operate it over the next few years. So what's the best way to pursue those demonstrations? And then very similar question here is what mechanism is needed to consider the options for operating and compensating long duration storage projects? Should these be utility projects? Should they be market projects? And if they're market projects, how do you compensate them? What are the mechanisms there? So any feedback we can get on those would be great. And now I know I've been talking basically nonstop for the last 40 minutes, so I think I'm going to stop and turn it back over to Shyam to move us into the last portion of the webinar.
Thanks, Skylar. I don't know how you did it, but gotten through all that content just at the top of the hour. So thank you. So just I think a couple more slides as part of this deck before we move to Q&A. As we wrapped up the substantive discussion that Skylar closed, just want to flag for stakeholders just the process and next steps relating to the roadmap. So the roadmap itself was filed last December, and that was shortly followed by the opening of a public comment window, as is typical with regulatory filings. So the public comment window is open through March 20th, and comments can be filed on DPS's website. The case number is 18-E-0130. And so in terms of the process, that comment window is open through March 20th. Following that, the Public Service Commission and DPS will be reviewing those comments, deliberating on them, and then the Public Service Commission may then issue an order after that, either approving the roadmap or denying the roadmap or the proposals that were included in the roadmap, or approve a modified version of the roadmap, again, based on any further discussion, deliberations coming out of the comments, or internal discussions. And then if the roadmap is approved or approved with modifications, NYSERDA would then file after that approving order an implementation plan that specifies additional program design details that were not included in the original roadmap proposals. For example, the weightage, for example, of the non-price factors in bid evaluation. That's an example of something that would be left with the implementation plan. And that implementation plan may also be subject to a public comment period for stakeholders to provide comment and input, as well as commission approval. And then following the approval of that implementation plan, NYSERDA would then be able to implement that final approved program design as part of the first bulk storage RFP. So that is the process from here on out. Next slide, please. Okay, so then that brings us to Q&A. And as I mentioned, we received a number of questions in advance of the webinar through New York BEST, the trade association, as well as through our NYSERDA's energy storage inbox. In addition to which, we received around 20 questions over the course of this webinar. So again, we'll do our best to get to every one of them here. Likely won't be able to do that. I would just say, in case you have a question that is critical to your ability to provide comment as part of the public comment window and process, and we don't end up answering it, please feel free to reach out to us directly, either to the NYSERDA storage program team, or use the energy storage at nyserda.ny.gov email inbox to send your question, and we will endeavor to answer it in a timely fashion. So let me start now by taking a stab at answering some of the many questions we received. So this is something Skylar already addressed, but it has come up again, and it is likely to keep coming up. So just worth clarifying again. So question is, regarding the geographic or locational breakdown of deployments with regard to the 6 gigawatt build out that the modeling analysis showcases. Does NYSERDA expect to use those results to drive the actual procurements? So as Skylar said, those results, the modeling results, won't be literally used as specific targets by location, but they will be used to guide our procurements by location. So because again, that is the model is picking is deciding to build storage where it is most valuable and where it has results in minimal system costs. So it is an important consideration for us to inform procurements, but again, more in a soft way, such as, for example, preference for downside deployments to offset peakers. So that's just one thing to note. We won't be literally taking the results and then just procuring storage based on the exact numbers there, but using them as a guide. Second question is, the modeling results seem to indicate a huge spike in demand for storage in Zone F in 2050. Why is that? And the answer is really a combination of things. There's transmission flows, higher loads because of electrification, and then reliability needs. Those drive many areas increasing the need for storage, but Zone F in particular is at a key juncture of the system that is likely to increase in importance by 2050. Next question is, there's a comment in the roadmap that awarded storage projects could elect to receive compensation under the index storage credit. Um, if and sorry, when and awarded here is storage projects that are awarded either through a tier one or offshore wind solicitation. So the question is, please clarify if these previously awarded storage projects through other procurements could elect to receive compensation under the ISC. So just to clarify, the proposal here is that projects could participate in an ISC solicitation, but still decide to operationally pair with, for example, an offshore wind project if that method works better for timing and business models. However, projects cannot hold contracts from both solicitations. So if a project won an award from a tier one solicitation, it would have to give that up to then participate in and be awarded through an ISC solicitation. The next question is, will bidders be required to indicate whether they intend to avail themselves of the inflation adjustment before bidding? And will this factor into bid evaluation? And the short answer is yes. Bidders will need to provide information about the validity of their strike price and inflation adjustments, and projects will then be evaluated on the total costs and benefits of the project, inclusive of all of the relevant information. Next question is, what weight will be given to non-price factors in the ISC solicitation? So I just mentioned that um, at this point, and what the roadmap proposes uh, is a less granular level detail. It simply proposes to include non-price factors in the ISC solicitation. And the specifics around which factors and their weightage in the evaluation process will be part of or will be included in the implementation plan, or at least the proposals for those will be included in the implementation plan. At this point, I think additionally what we can say is we're likely to follow pretty similar criteria as the non-price factors used in the large-scale renewables, tier one large-scale renewable solicitations, with perhaps added criteria that are specific to the energy storage requirements of the CLCPA regarding um, peaker output reduction. Next question is, how will bulk procurements be distributed geographically? So again, um, the roadmap doesn't propose specific procurements for different zones or locations. It does propose having at least a targeted downstate carve out for zone J, at least, for example, both from the point of view of peaker offset as well as disadvantaged communities benefits. And that is something that comes directly from the CLCPA, that the CLCPA has language requiring a percentage of projects to be located in zones that can offset peakers for disadvantaged communities benefit. And that ends up being primarily functionally zones J and K of the NISO system. So we do envision a significant proportion, around 40% roughly, of projects being procured downstate. But again, just to be clear, we do expect all geographies to be eligible for participation. So that is again a layer of detail in terms of the specific geographic allocations, or having a downstate or zone J carve out is something that would be proposed and articulated as part of the implementation plan, assuming the roadmap itself is approved. Next question is around wholesale market rule changes that Skylar mentioned that could trigger contract amendments as proposed. So the question is, how will those rule changes trigger contract amendments, and what constitutes a wholesale market rule change? So short answer here is, again, this is another layer of detail that was not uh, gotten into at a very granular level in the roadmap proposal itself, and will be part of the implementation plan. But basically, a process will need to be in place to manage potential windfalls and ratepayer exposure to new payments to projects that are participating in new market opportunities. So the program rules are expected to be very specific and avoid being punitive to projects that could see either short-term or relatively small increases in revenue due to new products. Primarily, we want to avoid significant ratepayer exposure in extreme instances. So this is really um, kind of a nuclear option, putting it crudely. It's not something we're envisioning as needing to be triggered or activated in a large percentage of projects. Hopefully, it won't be activated at all. And the specifics around what constitutes a wholesale market rule change, that will need to again be articulated at a very fine level of detail for stakeholders and to be comfortable with as part of the implementation plan. Next question is around durations. How will NYSERDA determine whether and how much to carve out a portion of the procurements for 8-hour storage? So as Skylar just mentioned a little while ago, it's still, the roadmap does not propose a specific carve out or even a soft target for procuring longer duration resources. And NYSERDA ideally wants to preserve some flexibility there. We do expect to have a preference for a diversity of resources in terms of duration for both ratepayer benefit and risk reduction, as well as providing a broader suite of services to the grid. And ideally, we'd probably want to avoid hard targets for any single duration or location to avoid overpayment and increase competition. But that is a question that is also lined up explicitly to seek input from stakeholders as to whether um, an explicit carve out for 8-hour storage or longer duration storage is necessary. Next one is not as much a question as much as a comment, which is that given that NISO energy and capacity prices are reported in different units, having units in all the IC calculations would be very helpful. And so yes, all prices will be converted to a single common unit, which is expected to be dollar per megawatt hour of energy capacity. So that means that the capacity pricing, which is in dollars per kilowatt month, would be converted to dollar per megawatt hour with an additional layer of adjustment for capacity accreditation factor that Skylar mentioned. Next question is around project maturity milestones. In that, what project maturity milestones will be required to bid into the IC solicitation? Again, that's not something the roadmap has commented on. It's an implementation plan matter. I think all we can say right now is that higher maturity represents higher viability in many cases and may result in lower attrition risk and quicker timelines to deployment. So it's likely that there will be project maturity milestones, but they have not been proposed specifically as part of this roadmap. The next question is around the reference price and the visibility of reference prices. So the roadmap is proposing that the reference price would be derived from multiple price indices that represent an approximation of available market commodity revenue that projects could reasonably expect to earn, quote unquote. So the question is, will NYSERDA put out forecasted pricing or a calculator for developers to estimate the reference price when calculating a bid strike price? Or conversely, should each developer form an internal view of the revenue opportunity and develop their own reference price? So in terms of the thinking right now is that we would certainly consider providing details to developers, at least to the level that's provided by the large scale renewables program for projects participating in their solicitation. So at the very least, the reference price definitions would be clear, i.e. on the energy arbitrage component, as well as the capacity accreditation factor adjusted capacity price component. Those definitions will be clear. We may also provide information regarding our sources for long-term power and capacity prices. And that is as much as far as we have currently envisioned going as far as providing information or visibility about the reference pricing to developers. At the same time, I would say that is definitely an area that is open for comment. So as is really anything in the roadmap. But again, if stakeholders have a view about whether it is necessary for NYSERDA to put out forecasted pricing, or even beyond that, a calculator tool, that's something that we would be very interested in hearing about. Next question is around the inflation adjustment that was mentioned by Skylar. Will bidders be required to indicate whether they intend to avail themselves of the inflation adjustment before bidding? And will this factor into bid evaluation? Actually, I think this is already, I just answered this previously, but again, just to repeat, yes, the bidders will need to choose whether to bid with or without the adjustment. question regarding LIPA and NIPA's participation in the bulk program. What are the expectations for LIPA and NIPA participation in the bulk program? Right now, there is no expectation that LIPA and NIPA would participate in the bulk program, other than the roadmap's recommendation that they participate in proportional customer collections like the rest of the investor-owned utilities. There's a high-level question about disadvantaged communities. I think the question is just, what is a disadvantaged community? And that 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 and so the reference I would make there is to the language in the Climate Act, or the CLCPA. The CLCPA defines disadvantaged communities as communities burdened by negative public health effects, environmental pollution, and climate change impacts, as well as communities that possess certain socioeconomic criteria or comprise high concentrations of low and moderate income households. So really, it's a combination of low and moderate income households, and then communities affected by environmental justice issues and public health issues. And for a more specific answer here, NYSERDA does have a map tool that you can find pretty easily online that show which zip codes and neighborhoods meet the criteria for being disadvantaged communities. Just looking through the remainder of questions, so please bear with me.
I can take one in the meantime, Shyam. There was one here about whether round trip efficiency should be included in the reference energy arbitrage price. That's something we're open to, but we're not 100% sure that it's going to make a difference. There was some concern that not having round trip efficiency explicitly in the arbitrage price is going to, preference higher round trip efficiency resources. We kind of see it as, regardless of whether you include, say, a 80 or 70% round trip efficiency adjustment in the reference price, higher efficiency resources will always be able to capture arbitrage value better. And so there's going to have to be other values for lower round trip efficiency projects either way. And we're happy to take comment on, if there's one way that's better than the other, including versus not including round trip efficiency in the energy arbitrage price. Is there one that actually makes financing easier or better for all projects? Because we want to make sure we're doing the things that are most cost effective.
Thanks, Skylar. Yeah, I missed that one earlier. So just coming back to a few other topical questions. One question was around funding availability, specific to the proposed bulk programs. So the question is, what happens if the requested funding is exhausted before all expected megawatts are procured? For example, if wholesale prices are lower than expected and more payment to developers is necessary. So this is the way with the method of funding for bulk storage that is proposed, we will not have a fixed budget to pay out for the index storage credit contract. So it will operate much as offshore wind and the tier 1 large scale renewable programs operate, where the roadmap is really asking for the concept of the IC and the budget range to be approved. And then the contracts are signed and paid out over time, even if cost increases. So really all megawatts would be procured before 2030. Programs would be designed to procure the expected number of megawatts. And since a specific funding amount is not being requested here, that is not an issue we expect to manifest as far as the bulk program is concerned. There's a few questions related to modeling, which I think we can get into now, and then I'll flip things back over to you, Skylar, for a fresh batch. So there's a few questions we have specific to zones G, H, and I. One is, why is there such a huge discrepancy between the 430 megawatts in zones G, H, and I in the modeling analysis and the significant amount of fossil and nuclear generation in G and H and I in 2010 to 2015? Is there some new barrier to deliverability of generation in GHI to load? And the short answer here is that a significant amount of new load, as well as offshore generation in New York City and Long Island, are driving a need for more storage in those zones, zones J and K, as opposed to other areas. And that's particularly then that gets exacerbated when pricing considerations arise. So that is probably one of the key drivers of that discrepancy. Related question is, what GHI scenarios, if any, were studied in the modeling exercises? I would just point you to the appendix of the roadmap itself. All the scenarios that were studied are in the appendix. There were no specific scenarios or scenarios specific to the zones G, H, and I that were run, or no zone specific analysis were run there. Question around, does NYSERDA anticipate NYPA competing for NYSERDA funds given the governor's proposed budget language expanding NYPA's authority? I would say it's probably not appropriate for us to comment on the impact of proposed legislation, ongoing legislation. What we can say, I think, right now is that previously NYPA was not eligible to participate in NYSERDA RFPs. We'll have to see how the legislation progresses, what comes out of that, if and when it passes, to really answer this question definitively. So not really something we can comment on with much specificity right now. And with that, I think, Skylar, I'd perhaps hand things back to you to just go through the last batch of questions that we received most recently, if that's okay.
Sure, sounds good. So I think we'll start with one that says, are the figures that we showed today of the deployed, contracted, and awarded projects, are those real projects, like firm projects? Do they post security or anything? Those are all projects that have signed contracts that are all moving forward. They're not just, say, a pipeline and a queue. Those are things that actually have contracts or are already constructed. So we would consider those firm projects. Next question is, the previous bulk incentive program provided higher incentives for smaller bulk projects. Is that going to continue? I don't think we're necessarily going to have carve-outs for project size. They would likely just compete based on project viability. If they can be delivered years faster, or smaller interconnection costs, or those things, those types of benefits should show up in their index storage credit bids. So I don't think we're going to have carve-outs for specific sizing of bulk projects anymore. In this next question is on the 6 gigawatt modeling results charts. They're showing the 4 and 8 hour durations. Does that imply 2 hour storage is not foreseen as a core piece of 6 gigawatts? That's actually what at least the model says. We're not necessarily going to prohibit 2 hour resources from participating, but when given the opportunity, the model did not procure any 2 hour duration resources beyond what we have already procured. The bulk program, as well as the retail program that we've already run in New York State, has procured a significant quantity of 2, 3, and 4 hour duration resources that were hard coded into the modeling as firm resources. And so the model has basically chosen not to add any additional short duration resources, primarily because the need that the model is seeing is 4 hours and beyond, starting very soon. So that it did not see a need to add short duration resources right now. But it's not a prohibition on it through our programs. So here's a question that's very interesting. What does a large retail project do? So it's over 5 megawatts, but can't go through the standard interconnection because it's over 5 megawatts, but it might not be participating in the wholesale energy markets exclusively. I'm assuming this might be a behind the meter project or a significant size in front of the meter project. I would say those projects may have to compete in the index storage credit solicitations because the standard offer requirements are based on essentially VEDR participation or some other form of market participation that this type of large retail project may not have access to, but we'd have to take those on kind of a case-by-case basis over time. How would NYSERDA define, measure, or verify whether the project is operational? Another great question. We know that this data exists, days and hours when a project is not operational, when it's on forced outage, when it's ICAP ineligible, those types of things. It's just a matter of having that information transmitted to NYSERDA so that we can utilize that in our contracting. So it's probably going to have to be some form of agreement with either the developer and the NYSO, or just the NYSO, to make sure that we can have that information potentially as an agreement, a portion of our contract, to make sure we can identify operational days. Next question is, for the index storage credit, is there numerical examples? Yes, okay, we can provide the numerical examples and the translation example of how we do, say, the dollar per kW of monthly capacity price into a dollar per megawatt hour units. We can just post that because we've gotten that question a lot. Next question is, how is the degradation accounted for over the 15-year term? And this is specifically related to the fact that ISCs are generated based on operational availability, but the system might degrade and provide lower ISCs over time. That's up to the developer to consider as they bid into the process. If they're expecting degradation and might develop and produce fewer index storage credits over time, they're going to have to account for that in their strike price. And maybe increase their strike price to make sure they're still getting compensated at the level that they need to make over fewer index storage credits over the life of the project. Next question is, when a developer is calculating the strike price, will there be a standard 15-year curve for arbitrage or capacity projects prices, and is there degradation accounted for? We're not really able to necessarily just post forecasted energy prices. All projects are going to have different commissioning dates, different contract start dates, different CODs, and different retirement dates. So I'm not sure we're going to be able to post, say, a reference price average over the 15 years for every project. We might be able to share. We're obviously going to share the reference price calculation formula, and we may be able to share the sources we intend to use in terms of long-term hourly energy price forecasts and capacity price forecasts. But I think it's unlikely we're going to post, actual reference price calculations for every day of every year for the next 15 years. That'll be up to you all, the developers, to figure out what their forecasts are like and what that means for their strike price. Next question is there an opportunity for the owner to update their strike price over time to better reflect market conditions or variable cost structures? We have considered this about whether there's an option to, over time, maybe after 5 years or after 10 years, to have a reopener to negotiate strike prices again. I don't think we've implemented that in any of our other programs, but we could consider it here if there's some significant difference between storage and other resources. But all we're considering right now is the inflation adjustment option between contract signing and commissioning. But happy to take comments on that if there's strong feelings about what we should do about updating strike prices. Next question is, what would happen to your return if your storage asset, if you can't capture the arbitrage of all 4 hours? So the reference energy arbitrage price is just reflective of a potential amount of energy arbitrage revenue over 4 hours. If you have a, say, 2-hour asset or 3-hour asset that cannot receive that value, you're kind of you're having more subtracted out of your strike price that you're not capturing in the market as compared to, say, a longer duration asset. So you may have to increase your strike price or rely more on other revenue streams to buy down your participation and reduce your strike price again accordingly. But that's up to the developer to figure out how to best bid in different durations of assets to compete within the markets, because you are obviously buying, if you're buying a 2-hour asset, you're buying half the amount of battery, so you're cheaper. But you might not be getting all the energy arbitrage opportunities, so you're not getting all the revenue. So it's kind of a give and take that we'll have to balance both through the bidding structure on the part of the developer and also the evaluation structure through, say, NYSERDA and DPS as we run these things. The next question is, have we thought about the conflict of capacity market bidding requirements versus arbitrage value? So we're not forcing any participation. We're not saying, since there is a reference energy price, therefore you have to participate in those exact 4 hours. We're expecting that, in certain days you might only do reserves and never be called into the energy market at all. Or you might operate in 4 hours for your capacity obligation that aren't the best 4 hours for day ahead energy. We don't know all of that. We're just trying to pick something that is publicly available, able to be agreed upon, very clear and transparent way to develop reference prices as a hypothetical revenue opportunity for a certain type of project within the market. And then it's up to you all to figure out how to operate those assets and create strike prices accordingly that reflect your beliefs about your participation in those markets. Next question is, would we consider durations shorter than 4 hours? Or why have we only considered durations between 4 and 8? We considered all durations up to 8 hours. The model just didn't choose any. We obviously would consider resources under 4 hours if they're cost competitive. And we didn't go above 8 hours because the model could not incorporate resources that would not be able to do a charging and discharging cycle within 24 hours. We tried to remedy that by doing model runs outside of the model. And that's in the appendix, how we did long duration storage, but the model was constrained to 8 hours and less. I know we have, I think, a handful of questions still left, like the slides. We do hope to make the slides available. We don't really have great estimated time frame on when we could run a bulk solicitation, because we would still need approval of the order, approval of an implementation plan, and funding availability and RFP documents, all those types of things. So we're still a ways away from being able to run these, but hopefully maybe by the end of the year or early next year. Shyam, do we have a way we're probably going to manage maybe the last 5 to 10 questions that haven't been answered, maybe through an FAQ or something?
Yeah, thanks, Skylar. So yeah, we are at time, so I think we should just wrap up now and can address that question. So so there are a number of unanswered questions. Some of them are very relevant. So we are likely to publish an FAQ type document in the next few days, but then also try to get back to individual questioners as much as we can. So in the meantime, I would still encourage folks, if you have a question that we didn't answer today that is critical to your ability to provide comments, I would encourage you to again proactively reach out through the energystorage@nicerta.ny.gov email inbox and submit your question or resubmit your question, even if it was asked was sent to us previously. One question I do want to answer because it's relevant to tomorrow is that this webinar mainly focused on utility scale projects. Will there be another presentation to focus on the commercial scale? Yes, there will be. It is scheduled to be held tomorrow from 11 to 12:30 Eastern. So tomorrow's webinar, again, will be covering the roadmap, but with the focus on the residential and retail storage segment. So that's when you can expect to hear more on that. So again, just last couple of things before we wrap up. As Skylar mentioned, you will see a copy of the recording and the slide deck posted to NYSERDA's bulk storage incentives page in the webinar presentation section within the next 72 hours. Also, please be aware again of how to submit public comments online. You can go to the DPS website under the energy storage matter case number 18-E-0130, and it should be fairly straightforward for you to submit comments. And again, please reach out to us if you have any questions about this presentation. So that concludes today's webinar. Again, many thanks to everybody that attended and took the time. We will endeavor to get back on any other unanswered questions. And in the meantime, hope to continue engaging with you all through this roadmap process. So thank you all. Thank you to our DPS team, as well as my NYSERDA colleagues for making this a smooth and productive session. And have a good rest of your day.